Hi, welcome to the last part of this lecture. In this part, this is the lecture on the GDP and growth of the introduction to the economics course. And in this part, basically, we will go over the questions, practice questions. So let's start. The first question asks, assume revenue of a producer from her production stayed constant in 2012, but value added by her increased at the same year. What is the expected change in her material input costs, profit earns, rents, wages, rents, and interest paid by her? Note that value added is the sum of profit, wage, rent, and interest, and all other payments made to the contributors to the production. So the four things here, if we had tax, that we should add that, but we don't have tax here. So profit, rent, wage, and interest collected together as a whole should increase, but we cannot know how much individual ones have increased. Maybe one of them has increased and the other one has increased even more, basically. But the sum of four should basically more than the previous year. Since revenues are the same and value added is higher, the revenue is sum of input cost plus the value added. So we should the input cost should have decreased. Since value added increases, input cost should decrease so that revenue can stay the same. So this is the first question. Let's go to second. What are the ways to calculate GDP? Well, expenditure method, income method, aggregate expenditure method, aggregate income method, and the value added method. These are the three methods. In which case, cooking a meal within a house will create a value added in the economy. In which case, it won't. If you cook a meal in the house and then sell the meal, which happens in some cases actually, there are some small restaurants where actually home cooked meal is brought and sold there. That's one possibility. Another possibility might be you might cook the meal and bring it to the charity and sell. In each cases, it will be create a value added in the economy and it will be added to the GDP. But if you cook the meal and eat it yourself, or if you cook the meal and distribute it, for example, to the people for freely, in that case, it doesn't have a value added in the economy because something only has a value added if that it is sold. So that's the way the valuation is done. That's because we take prices as the main indicator that shows the value of the of goods and services, basically. So that means everything that is exchange freely or not exchange at all are not part of the GDP. Can a country with a very high GDP be a poor country? Can it be? Yes, it's a simple question, but it just reminds you what is at the top. If that country has a very large population, and if you divide that very large GDP with a very large population, you get a low number. GDP per capita is low. In that case, yes, that country can be a poor country. One example is, as we've seen before, India. What is convergence theory? It is a theory that basically drives the conclusion all countries, but the market system works good, and when sufficient level of infrastructure is built, the GDP of all countries will converge to the same value or get closer to each other, because relatively low-income countries will grow faster as capital productivity in those countries is higher. Well, actually, two sentences will be enough. It would be enough to say what the convergence theory is claiming, actually. Although another sentence the justification of this claim would also be necessary. So basically, the claim and briefly, very briefly, the justification would be enough to describe a theory in a few sentences. That's what you should be careful of. I mean, how much you should write in this case. I mean, the claim and justification is the thing you should go. And justification should not be detailed. I mean, after you say the justification, that justification could be, of course, tested or learned more detailedly. Anyway, let's go down. Write a way that can promote growth. There are many different ways. But for sustainable growth, for example, of course, you need to be sure that, well, basically, the resources that come to a limit should be replaced by resources that are more abundant, like sun, solar, light, for example, which is a way to make sure that your growth will continue, because those resources might put a limit, or the waste might put a limit because it might transform the environment, but also subsidizing education, or basically promoting education might be a way, although there is a discussion there too. Some promoting R&D spending, and there you can also think about different ways, patent rights, and subsidizing or financing R&D spending, or organizing even. Well, encouraging savings to flow to your country also can promote growth, for example. This is another way. Encouraging maybe savings in your country might be a way, but in that case, of course, you should be careful about the short-term problems, and also your savings should not flow outside. I mean, if people save in your country, there's a danger that they will send the money to a foreign country. You should make sure that doesn't happen if they save. So, let's go further. So assume a city, Byzantium, which is Istanbul actually, the oldest name of Istanbul, has three sectors: farmers, weavers, entertainers. Find value added for each sector and find GDP. I think I should not even open the Excel sheet for this, because there are two calculations I should make. 3,000 divided by this, you should subtract from revenues input costs. So when you subtract from 3,000, 1,500, you got 1,500. Similarly, here you find 3,500, and here you find 750. So well, then of course you should add. Let's open it now. So this was the first one. This was 3,500, and this was this. I add all of this. 5,750 units. I don't want to say dollar when I didn't specify it. So this is value added in any sector, and basically GDP level. If you want, you can also calculate the same type of use this chart to calculate the GDP through the aggregate income method. Let me see. This is 2,050. This is aggregate wage. So let's write it 2,050. Aggregate profit is 300. Rent is 600. 300, 600. We should have very large, yes, profits. That's interest, of course. The profits are 2,800. And the summation should give you the same value. Yes, it is. If it doesn't, that means either you have made a mistake or I have made a mistake. And you should check it by looking whether all this sum should give you the revenues. I mean, when you sum these up. Okay, let's go down. Assume another city, calculated on this Kadıköy, now a kind of a part of borough of Istanbul, or not neighborhood, a larger entity, was producing 3,000 units of wheat, 2,000 units of clothing, or I should say clothing, basically here. Assume the price of wheat is $10, price of clothing is $5. Assume in 2000, well, that's the 664 BC, wheat production has increased to 3,500 units, clothing has increased to 1,500 units. While wheat has, the prices have become 12 and $4. Okay, let's do that. So 665 and 664. We will do everything for these years. Wheat and clothing, quantity and price. Similarly, wheat, clothing, Q and price. So the quantities are 3,000, 2,000, and 10, 5. I hope there is nothing. Yes, and then 3,500 and 1,500. 3,500 and 1,500, and the prices are 12 to 4. So, well, if we use nominal prices, basically, what we will do is we need to multiply this with this, and we find the value of each thing. Let's do this. So the GDP is in this case well, GDP is in this case the sum of these numbers for the 665 and sum of these numbers for the 664. When we look to the real GDP, of course, when we take base year 665, it is the same. Do we do that? Yes. We use the price of 665. However, for the year 664, this means we need to calculate multiply quantities with the prices of 665. Well, now, of course, the values change. I mean, wheat becomes less valuable and the clothing becomes more valuable. And here, actually, we see another maybe discussion. In 664, for some reasons, people value wheat more and clothing less. It's not a gradual increase in prices, but we take the valuation of the people in the 665. So price valuations might reflect people's valuations, but we fix that valuation. We fix a particular type of preference at the history, basically. That preference itself might have changed. But anyway, when we do that, our GDP has decreased from 48,000 to 42,500. Obviously, because wheat is less valuable in this case, and wheat was the thing that has increased basically. So, I think that's all for this lecture. It has been a long lecture anyway. So I hope to see you in my next lecture, and stay healthy.